Hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Katie, and I talk a lot about planning your energy when it concerns being neurodivergent or having chronic illness. Sometimes those can definitely be overlapping. And I wanted to talk about activism and that there are so many different ways to be an activist in the communities that you belong in. Just living out our day-to-day lives and showing up can be activism in itself. To be visibly seen as, like someone with disabilities or someone who has had a lot of rights being given and also being taken away as of late, it can be just activism showing up. So this is not a list of things that you have to do. This is not an exhaustive list. These are ideas to think about, and many of you may already be doing a lot of these things, but I wanted to kind of put out like a base here, and I've been wanting to do this for like a couple months now. And it's been really hard for my own health to get to this point. But I also was stuck on a bit of one of the things listed here, which was like perfectionism. I was thinking like, well, maybe now's the time to do something. Maybe now I can perfect this a little bit more. But part of being activated, part of being involved in politics in any way, and yes, you living is being political, as I said, is that things are always changing. New things are going to come out after this video. We've had so much happen in the last month with just, this. So this is August of 2024. At this point, we don't know what the election results in November are going to be. We've had nominees step down. We've had nominees step up. We've had a lot of just like riding the roller coaster of political news as of late. I won't disguise, my preferences. Politically, I've talked a lot on this channel. And so if that's quite a shock to you at this point, then I'm sorry, maybe you're just new to my channel. But I do talk a lot about, activism in a space of how do we gain rights for the people. So, and as I go through this list, I tried to write them a little bigger this time. I know last time I wrote the list just kind of smaller, but as I go through these, just kind of think, to yourself, like, what is most comfortable for you? What is stretching your boundaries a little bit? So knowing like, okay, this is where I need to be because of some health things that are going on, or this is like, I'm feeling a little bit better. Oftentimes on this channel, I talk about low, medium, and high energy. And so having to reference my thing that I did at the beginning of the year here we go, where I talk about having low, medium, and high energy. I have a bunch of things in these areas that I know I can go to. So if I'm low energy and I need to look at my finances, I can look at some accounts and I can check my bill tracker and just pay one or two things. Like that's all the capacity I have for that day. You can do the same for involving yourself in any kind of activism for the day. Like, hey, it can also be really emotional to go through this as well. And that's why I'm kind of separating that out from like my everyday things. And I think that's why a lot of people don't have it in their planners for everyday things. But, being active, being an activist in this world isn't just once every 4 years here in the US. It's a constant thing. It's something that we're constantly leaning on our leaders, talking to our leaders, putting the pressure on our leaders to look at things maybe in a different light if we feel like they're not working for us. So having, and again, I want to help support that kind of a thing of like having a grid or having planning pages to do so. And that's coming. But today, I mean, you can do this in any notebook. The stuff that I talk about for any of political things, you can do in any notebook, right? Just like any kind of printable, any kind of thing you can set up in your notebook however you want, But sometimes having some tools to focus on can help. And that's been my goal for a very long time. So activism. Activism is, it's hard to describe because it can be, again, just walking out your front door. It can be through parenting. It can be donating to a cause. It can be participating in local government. It can be going to your city council meetings, speaking up to your local school district boards, speaking up. It can be so many things. Having, attending protests, attending rallies, attending, being there in person. That may not be safe for everyone. And safety, again, can come in the form of, would you be safe in that space? To would you be possibly, if you're immunocompromised, could you even attend? Are masks enough for you? Like there's just so many things that possibly being in a lot of these where you see in a lot of videos, whether it's on TV or social media, you may not be able to participate in those things, but there are other ways to participate, right? So let's start off. You and your values. So being really, really clear, I think we can look at our political system and go, there is so much, so much. I could focus my time over here or over there, or, what kind of causes are, mean the most to your heart. So what are your values? What are the things that are most precious to you living in our country? What are the things that most affect you? What are the things that don't affect you, but affect the people that you know? Or what are just your basic values of like, I don't know anybody who's gone through this, but I just know it's wrong that this is happening. So we need to look at it in all these shades of gray, because I think oftentimes we can go, how does this affect us? And that is what we think our values are when we vote. But I think a lot of more progressive values, a lot more of values that look at the country as a whole and at all of our communities as a whole, we can look at these communities and go, this doesn't affect me, but I still need to speak out about it. But not speak over the people whose voices we need to hear, right? So being really in touch with what are the values that I'm going to focus on that are going to mean the most, that need my voice to contribute. It could be your voice. It could be your donations. It could be volunteering. It could be, and a lot of things, if you think about like a rally on its own, you can't just have a couple people there and call it a rally, right? You have a bunch of people actually there, but you have people who are doing video and audio and signs, and those signs sometimes are printed that day or the day before. It's and all the social media and all the graphics, or like there's so many levels to things. There's security at the doors. There's like all these people coming together that are creating this rally in the first place. And then there's people at home, spreading the message, the videos that are coming out of that rally. And it can also be where can we question our candidates about certain causes, so we know if their values are what you value. Where can you get in line for that? Where can you, because a lot of those questions are carefully selected, but what if your question came up? It's something to think about, is like all these different ways. There's activism in art. There's there's a huge amount of activism in art. I don't want to like gloss over that too quickly, because there can be so many ways to like just show your art and to show that it's speaking up about things that are happening that you're like, this is not right. That art is a huge part of activism. And if you're an artist, writer, artist, anything of like putting your work out into the world, there is definitely an opportunity to have that. I see so many beautiful pieces of art that are political. And most of it is in some sort of way. Usually there's some kind of message being sent. Sometimes it's not, it's just about peace. Sometimes the art is just about peace in itself. So knowing what you value and what your family values and what others around you value, and spreading out into that community, knowing what those core things are is really important, so that possibly where the outlets are that you're going to spend your time. I'm not talking about like, well, this candidate values this and this one. It's not about just the voting part. I'm talking about the actual activism of being part of this whole system, this whole, because sometimes it can feel like you're screaming into the void. Sometimes it can feel like it doesn't matter, or what's one more person, or, I'm so busy, what can I do? So thinking about it could be animals are one of your core values, and you want to put money towards local shelters for them, or the unhoused, or, there's so many things out there. But sometimes when you focus it down and go, okay, this is what I'm going to put my energy, and money is energy as well. Money you've earned, or money that has come to you, is a form of energy that you can also release back into where you want it to go. No perfectionism. So again, I touched upon this at the beginning. I was just like, I want this to be as simple, as comprehensive as possible, as easy to just pick it up and like kind of identify and go through this. But I'm like, I need to talk about these things, and this may not be the perfect order, but it is going to be what it is. This is a moment in time that I can speak out about this, but I also speak up in my other videos about things too. It's not like this is my only opportunity, but also no one has this all figured out. We are a giant community of people here in the United States, and we're trying to all figure this out as a big group. If there was a perfect candidate that everybody loved, then is that even real? I don't think you could ever have that. So, and for those who are activating, you may meet people who've been like activists for a very long time. And yeah, they have a lot of experience, and you can ask them questions if they have time, right? It's, or say, hey, can I message you or something? Because I just have some questions here. try to educate yourself as much as possible. But then if you are interested in becoming community organizers as well, ask those who are doing it, right? So there's going to be people with more expertise and more information out there. And again, that's a little bit why I was holding back a bit, because I was like, what do I know? What do I know about this? But I know I need to speak upon this from my perspective, because I don't see a whole lot. I see some. I definitely see some people, especially like Planners and Wine with Meg and Myra. I love their podcast videos so much. And I love how, I love what they have to say. I love a lot of the things that they do, but it's not often is a lot of political or activism sprinkled in a lot of these planner videos, because I think a lot of people are like, I just want to focus on planning. But if you're planning your life, you're also planning how you're speaking out and how you're just going about your day to day and participating in political conversations and donations and all that stuff. So try to remove the perfectionism from it. You aren't here to judge other people. People aren't here to judge you on how much you're participating. So if someone is, then maybe say, hey, this is my, personal thing. It's a lot like personal finances. I think a lot more people are talking about their personal finances now, which I find really intriguing. It does help to kind of have stable footing and know what you're kind of doing around finances. And I see the same kind of literacy of having the knowledge of like, okay, I'm trying to think how to say this. There is a lot of financial literacy involved in showing what you're doing. Like you need to have experienced it for a while. So, the same can be with political literacy of understanding the media, understanding what is going on. This person saying this person saying this. And I think a lot of times, especially for neurodivergent people, it can be really hard to read social cues and understand if someone is lying or not. I know myself, it's been a long journey of believing what somebody says and then they act differently. And then I'm very, very confused. And then that's my autistic side, right? So I do see how it can be really hard to break apart and go, okay, what is really going on here? Is this a power grab? Is this for a lot of people? Is this a promise that could be broken? There's a lot involved, which we'll get to in another one. So again, nobody's perfect. Not you, not the candidates. And there's a lot of other candidates. It's not just for president. There's a lot of other candidates out there who are running. As I said, it's always changing. So what we thought a month ago is definitely totally changed. The beginning of July, we did not think everything would be where it's at the beginning of August. It's been quite a lot. So, and between now and November and after November, it's going to change a lot. And to just determine how often you want to be absorbing that information. So, and from what outlets. So it could be that you have trusted news sources that you've always gone to. See if there's a few more that you can kind of look at and see if you're getting some swing one way or the other with the words that you're reading. And it can depend how much time you want to devote to reading about this. So in the last week or so, I've had to like cut back and go, okay, whenever I open Instagram, I know the very first thing I see is very much the algorithm, what the algorithm wants me to see, but it's also what I've been wanting to see the most. So, because it's not timeline based anymore, it's like what is getting the most views. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm getting the news that I want, but it can be very much my own echo chamber that, you know, I've tapped on quite a bit of that subject matter. So that's what comes up first. So knowing that, you know, the first time you open up, could be TikTok, could be something else, that you're looking at what is popular and what is the algorithm is sending to you. If you have other news sources to look at, try to kind of see. Some people even go to like, what are news sources that are the opposite of mine? So you can gauge how other people are talking about these things. And also, if you're talking to others in your family about how things are shifting and changing, sometimes it can be that a lot of the buzzwords from a lot of different sides can be very triggering. And it can immediately turn someone, I know for myself, if I hear someone talking with certain words, I'm just like starting to tune out already. Because I know where I stand. But the other side is also true. If I'm using words that are not just like talking straight to the person. I've heard this over several years. I know we've come a long way with new words and new definitions that much more accurately portray where we are and who we are and what is happening. And I totally agree with that, because we need accurate words to describe all these changes. But we also want to connect with people who may feel like they're not being heard. And so if sometimes we come back to like a conversation just speaking more plainly and not using all the new jargon, because in our echo chambers, we can definitely use that jargon over and over again. But if we're talking to someone who may be more centrist, more, you know, in the middle and is confused about a lot of things, or it's someone who you've known for a while, but they don't know your viewpoint, could be a family member, maybe talking to them in a way that they know how this directly affects you. I think it's really important to reach out. I also think it's very, very important to keep yourself safe. There are people out there who don't care. Who don't care what words you're using. They're going to sit in their beliefs. And it really isn't worth your time or energy because they are not moving. A lot of times they need to hear it from a certain person, maybe someone they can more identify with. It is a psychological effect that we will listen to people more like us. We group together with people who are more like us. We want diversity, but we also are like, oh, are you going through that too? I'm going through that too. That's a way of connecting, right? And we want to make those connections bigger and the web bigger and bring more people in. But we also have this, you know, when we're making those connections, we feel like, oh, these are our people, right? These are the people who I can let my guard down and feel safe around. So it's multifaceted. It's lots of grays. It's all this, but know that if you have a family member or a close friend that you just don't feel safe talking about politics with, do not. Like, I'm not saying go and blow up friendships, or if you're in a housing situation where that could make things dangerous, don't, right? But you can do your own things, you know, whether it's donating money or voting or doing things, you can do that in your values and your name. Emotional hangover. I had this today. I was like, There's been so much going on the last week or two. I'll say it, I just sat down and cried today because it's just been such an emotional ride for years too. It's, back to 2008 to 2000, like there's been highs and lows and everything in between. And so much is at stake. So much is at stake. And so that can feel so heavy. And when you talk to or just listen to a lot of the political news out there, it can just be so much. It can be so high and so low that the next day I'm like, why do I feel so drained? And you have to give yourself time from these emotional hangovers of, hearing these big spots of news and then the next day going, why do I feel off? Why am I having trouble concentrating? Why am I feeling just emotionally fragile? And that can be true, right? It can be physically draining as well. It may be harder to get up that day or harder to go, you know what? I am part of this volunteer group and I have to take a day off from it. And if you let them know, I'm sure they can definitely understand, and relate too, right? Like if everyone is, covering all this, they understand like, whoa, that was a big day yesterday, right? And tomorrow we'll need to rest. You need to rest. In any kind of activism, in any kind of political landscape, you need times to rest. And you may feel like there's this urgency, this constant urgency. And yes, we have a deadline of voting day in November. It's coming, right? So take time. The sooner that you rest, the sooner that you recognize. So it's really hard. Sometimes you're just like push. The sooner you recognize, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to have to take it easy so that the next day is going to be a little better. The sooner that you rest, the sooner you can kind of get back to it, if that's your goal, right? And knowing that quantity of participation is not a moral value. Like there are no moral points for participating more or less, and recognizing, okay, I'm going to start to volunteer and then, that's too much for me. And going to the organizer and saying, look, I was doing 100% there. I need to be at 50% if I'm going to see this all the way through. That's just where my physical limits are. And they're always looking for more people. Maybe you can help them recruit more. Like maybe that's your talent. Maybe that's what you pull in. But knowing that there's going to be these times where you need to take a physical or emotional break from things. And sometimes though we can go, okay, we're not going to look. And then that goes on for a day and that goes on for a week. And then we kind of hide our head from a lot of things. But there are times when we can come back and we can take little nibbles of what the daily news is and then pull back and focus on what our work is, what our families need, what we need. Yeah. Moving on. So safety. I touched upon this, but always keep in mind your own safety. So it could be financial safety, emotional safety, physical safety, any kind of community safetiness of just how can you keep you and others safe during whatever it is. And it could be that your friends around you are more vulnerable to what's going on. If there's demonstrations going on, maybe they need to stay inside. Maybe you need to stay inside. Just keep yourself safe. And then know when you can come back out. Again, it does not have to be outside your house. It could be even on social media. You may get more attention focused on you of negative comments. You can delete comments. You can block people, and the things that they say are going to be nasty because they want you to go away, because if you speak up and show your own power, they think things are being taken away from them. And that's not true. We're all coming together to become powerful together because our word has value. Our coming together has value. Us speaking up for us, ourselves, and others has value. Safety is first and foremost. And it could be safety for your health as well. So if something takes a dip in your health, it's okay to say, I'm going through this. People will understand. Shame and guilt have no, in terms of safety and emotional and physical, highs and lows, have nothing to do with what you're worth. What else here? Check and research. So there can be a lot of information coming out, and sometimes it takes just a moment to go, okay, I'm reading this thing on social media. Is it true? And a lot of it can be. There's a lot of information going out, showing what is going on in the world that other media is not touching. So it is very important to say, oh, this is real and accurate. And then there's other times where there's memes going around that they just aren't true. So taking a quick moment, having Google or whatever search engine you want, maybe Google isn't the one that you want to use. It's up to you. Because there's other search engines out there that you can use if you're worried about getting correct information. I'm using Google as in Kleenex is the generic term. So Google or searching, and where is that information coming from? Is it accurate? And so instead of just instantly sharing it, just take a moment and see if other people are talking about it the same way. I find a lot of activists who I follow quite regularly who are very close to, who are journalists themselves, who are very close to media, but they're independent, have their finger on the pulse of what is true and accurate. Sometimes, every once in a while, they get something that may not be true, but most people who are journalists are fact checking and going, is this something I want to spread, before they just spread misinformation. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and information can be told in a way that skews one way or the other. It can be a fact here, and one way to tell it goes this way, and one way to tell it goes that way. So understanding, is it, and I use the term echo chamber, and again, that's like a buzzword, right? The information that I'm constantly hearing and that I'm agreeing with, that's kind of the echo chamber, right? So I'm being fed from the algorithm a lot of information that I agree with. And so that can just I just get the same kind of news. And I want to branch out from there. So I visit other websites, I visit other pages, I go directly to sources, just so that I'm kind of hearing, well, what is this take on this situation? What is this take on this situation? Because that's two different ways to look at things. So just keep researching. Try to make sure that you are looking at all the grays. So if we're receiving information and it's really simplified, we want to try to see all of the multifacetedness of these topics. And so if, the two sides, if you're only seeing just the two sides and it's very polarizing, know that humans are much more well-rounded, multifaceted, depth. It can be surprising very surprising what one person can encapsulate in their life, right? Of who they've been, what they've done, and all these different things in their experiences. So can we sum someone up in like they're only this way? Now it's possible that you can come across people who are like they only do this, right? And they're very rigid. That's, again, we're not going to be trying to convince them, but when we look at issues and we're looking at it as like, well, it can only be this way or this way, then let's step back and try to look at things that are, there's just so many layers to everything. Well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this situation? But what is most common? What would help the most? What would be the best way forward for a lot of people? Yeah, it can be very tricky. Research can be very tricky because sometimes you don't know what kind of research is popping up and what's true. But try your best to just at least try to see if you're spreading misinformation or not, and take one step back. When you hear something, you go, oh, I just heard that. Is that true? And just try to do a little quick search and try to see, oh, yeah, okay. That was said by that person yesterday, but in what context? And usually there's a context there that is really important. Sometimes we just get a little snippet of something and we totally jump on there and judge, but there's usually a context around it. Activism is a sum of all small actions together. As I was mentioning at the beginning, there's so many different ways to participate. And it can be that, you haven't found the way that's going to help the most coming from you. So it could be phones, it could be emails, it could be graphics, it could be volunteering in person, it could be knocking on doors, it could be also using your channels like this to spread the word. So one important thing I would love everyone listening to do is just double check that your registration for voting is up to date. There have been many states purging the voter registrations due to many different reasons. Some of them very, very questionable. There are people who are in some states who are like, I voted for the last some odd years and been totally fine, and they go and search their registration and it had been deleted. So number one thing, go to your state and see if you are an active voter. This problem is going to be more common in certain states than in others. I am in Washington State. They do not do that here that I know of. Might be something that I need to Google. But take that small action. Just make sure that when you vote, it's going to count. Because there are a lot of changes that have happened even in the last year or so. And, and if, you voted 4 years ago and then you're only voting 4 years after, you can be very much like not registered. There may be something that came up, who knows. Please check your registration. That's the minimum thing from this whole video. That very small action, check to make sure you are registered. And if you aren't, register. Number one thing, just don't worry about anything else. Even if you don't even vote this time, just look to see, like, it's kind of like getting your passport, right? It's much, much simpler. When you have that tool in hand, you can go further and use it, right? When you have that voter registration, you actually can go and vote and participate. Make sure, if you're just turning 18 or anything like that, just check on, ages and stuff. Because you may be 18 by the time you can actually vote. So you can register a little early. I don't know. All states are different. So please check. That's a small action you can do. You can just donate $5 somewhere. It's a very small action. You can donate $5 a week. You can donate a whole lot more per week if you want to. But if you want to think about something sustainable that you can do even after the election is done, where can you... It's like saying, okay, well, this $5 every week is going to go somewhere. And right now it's going to these campaigns. And then after those campaigns are over, it's going to go towards this value that I have. It could be, as I said, like an animal shelter. It could be for any kind of reproductive rights. It can be for anything like that. Once you kind of put a slot in your budget that it's just going to be coming out, then it's just you deciding where it goes every week or every month, whatever frequency that you want. But that's a small action that you can do and say, okay, that amount is just what I want to do. And you may have other religious, like tithing or something that you're always donating towards. This can be separate from that, or it can be connected, whatever you want to do. But saying, okay, this is slotted for my community in some way. It could be the local food bank. It could be, and then you can add towards it of like, okay, I'm going to, if you don't have money to spend, you can attend, a city council meeting. So instead of spending the money, you're spending your time. Instead of spending money at the food bank, you can volunteer to be there. Instead of spending your money at the animal shelter, you could be there. But if you can't actually be in person because of your chronic illness, then see if money or maybe someone in your family can go for you. If you're recruiting, recruiting is a huge thing. I'm just saying, you know what? I talked with my other family members. I have a teenage son who wants to go, I've recruited them and they can go. And I know something is kind of a win-win situation there of just, they get to experience the volunteer work and the place gets to have somebody there to help them out. So think about what is the sum of all of these small actions coming together. And that's what a lot of organizers are keeping track of. So you don't have to come up with these, but talking to the organizers and seeing, well, is there anything I can do? Can I be a poll worker? They need poll workers desperately, but it can be kind of dangerous, depending what state you're in. Here in Washington State, I would probably say it's a bit safer. But in terms of like my chronic illnesses, I couldn't be around so many people. Even though I can mask up, it would be kind of hard. Maybe there's something behind the scenes where you're sitting and counting. They need a lot of poll workers. I don't know if in your state you can do that. Community. The whole point about activism and coming together for all of this is coming together and knowing that as we come together, it's going to make a difference for the lot of us, that we're speaking out for our needs. And a lot of people with disabilities or chronic illnesses are very political because it affects them so much. But finding just the way that you can participate is you have to keep searching. You just have to keep searching. I've done a lot of different kinds of volunteering, and you just have to keep trying. So when I was able to do more physical things, I was doing park reforestation projects where I would I would gather a lot of community members, especially those on the streets around that park. And we transformed a park within 5 years that we thought would take 10 years. But it's really something to have the people in that community come out and say, yeah, I live right here. I love visiting this park. I love, experiencing it in this way and knowing that their kids and themselves are like helping out. And so when they come to the park, they can go, yeah, we helped that one part over there, or can see this transformation over like the 5 years that we were, there. And the kids that first came were 5 years old and now they're 10 years old. And they grew up seeing that when we take these small steps where we would meet just once a month and we would do a small area, and then the next month do a small area, and then the fall we would do plantings. Again, it's the sum of small actions, but you're forming that community. You see the people who repeatedly come out. I've done PTA stuff where people are coming together and trying to, make these beautiful events happen for the kids. And you see the parents who come year after year and want to be part of things. You see the people in your community who are stepping forward for the city council and seeing how your city is changing around you. It can be hard when you are moving around. We personally moved around a lot during the first few years of being in this area. So we'd be only somewhere for a year or two and then you move on and you don't have that community as much. And again, at that time this was even before Facebook. So you don't get those feelings of community. And now that you can like hop onto Facebook, hop onto Reddit, hop onto wherever these communities are, and YouTube here is a huge way to connect with people and say, oh yeah, I'm going through the same thing, but I'm miles away from you, I think is such a gift, even though there can be a very dark side to a lot of the internet. It's still bringing a lot of people together who are chronically ill, who normally would never meet each other. And I think that is something really special to go, oh, you're going through that? I'm going through that too. Or, wow, you've gone through that. I've never gone through that, but now I can see it kind of through your eyes. So, yeah, community is so important. Try to find where your communities lie and what, again, goes back to your values. How are you connecting? And what communities are you forming so that you can support each other? And then the last part here, power in energy. Well, it's basically saying the same thing here. There is a lot of people in politics who are there for power only, for the power that they have to have over people. And I believe that when we are collecting our power together, that energy of coming together, that energy of being behind a campaign or a person or any kind of legislation or getting together in a group and going somewhere and saying, we believe in this, and it's super important when we put pressure on those who are working for us, right? If we're saying, hey, this really matters to us, there's power there. And it's not a power to have and lord over other people. This is a power of this energy, this collective energy. And to me, there's something really magical about energy and so many different concepts, right? The emotional hangover energy where your energy is low, the opposite of that where you're coming together and you're kind of riding the high of it. And then there's just your physical stamina and your emotional stamina through all this, and looking at everything as like energy. I think there's just something really magical about that, of just going, wow, I have different ways to spend my energy, have it taken away. I wake up, sometimes my energy is just not there, and it's not my fault. It's not other people's fault. It's just, that's how my body is. Or if we're trying to process like really big things, it can take a lot of energy to do that. Brain uses a lot of energy, a lot of calories from what you're, eating every day, your brain is using it, right? So, on top of all the physical that you're expending as well. So, think about how, even if you're an introvert, coming together in a community, maybe it's on Zoom, maybe it's through YouTube, maybe it's through Facebook, maybe it's through so many other communities. How can you come together to make that energy kind of can vibrate and bounce off one another and feed each other and grow bigger just by being around other people that are all focusing their energy the same way. There is one more thing I wanted to mention before I wrap up here, and now today, actually, my ballot was due for local, and I did. I turned it in early, but if you want to check out your ballot, there is ballotpedia.org, where you can prepare a little bit more about what's going to be on the ballot, because sometimes it's not just who's for president, right? It's not just that. There's a whole bunch of other things. There can be propositions. There can be a lot of nonpartisan positions. I don't know how much Ballotpedia will show everything, because right now we just did primaries, and so it'll be whoever we voted for now. The top two will then be in the election in November. So again, this is kind of part of the check and research part. Yeah, check out that to look up your ballot and check your registration. Those are like the main things that you can do, because that's what you have the power to do, that your voice matters, and that's what voting is all about. And don't think about, oh, well, someone else's vote's going to cancel out mine. Don't think that way at all. Your vote is going to go in, and it's going to be amongst a lot of different voices that may be the same as you, and you can help amplify that. So, again, not exhaustive. There's a whole bunch more that I could probably talk about. What did I miss? What are some of the things that you're finding during this election cycle? Now, we have a lot of things right now we're voting on, but what is like the long term that's really helped you? Do you find following political careers? It could be your senators in your area, what they have done over the last, 4 to 8 to more years. Your representatives for your state, for federal, like what kind of things help you in following all of politics? Because it's a lot, and you can't know every single candidate in every single place, but you can get to know what's on your ballot, and you can get to know the people in your area and the pros and cons. We actually have a newspaper in town who is really good at, like, a few newspapers, which will kind of compare candidates around, next to each other and go, this one has done this and this is what their actions are, but this one has done this and has a lot of experience here. So how do you kind of suss that out? It can be really hard that you're looking at two candidates and you're like, I don't know which one's better. I know also that Ballotpedia will show candidates in your area. If you just put the name in there, they will say, who they're running for. Not everyone answers the questions that are in Ballotpedia. I do find it really interesting when people take the time to answer the questions there that are some like the survey answers. And I do find that I glean some more information about the candidate themselves and some of their personal preferences that can sway me one way or the other. And it just can have some more information there. There may be other websites in your area that sum it up better. It could be that your area is leaning more one way or the other, and then you can have like a muddy view of who the candidates are. And if you want a more clear view, look at the actual paper, the like where all the candidates and the propositions for and against, like all that information that comes to you with your ballot. I find that can take a lot of time to go through, but it also really helps to get to know exactly what's going on. And when you have questions, some of the propositions themselves can be like, you know, we had one that's like annexing a bunch of ports together. So what does that even mean? How does that affect me? If I don't own a house, will that affect me if I'm renting? Or if I'm own a house, what are the taxes are going to be? There's just a lot to consider. So take your time. If you're just reading one section a night and still filling it out and just going, okay, I have a really good sense of this. It's that comprehension of things. And if you are confused, you can ask questions. See if there's someone else who can suss through it, to read through it. Maybe if they're even in another state, can they help you read through it and go, oh, I think what they're saying is this. It's not a bad thing at all to just get someone else to comprehend it with you. It's the comprehension itself that can be very overwhelming and go, oh, I can't do that. It's too complicated. It is. It's complicated. And allowing yourself enough time. So right when you get your ballot, start going through it. Just go one part at a time. Again, the sum of all the small actions you can take. Little tiny baby steps. I hope this helps. I hope this is something that you can kind of carry into this season, but then also after all that, the voting is done and all the turmoil of new people coming in, people being voted out, all that, when that like dies down after January, what do you do then? What can you participate in then? Because a lot of times you have to, like, if it's right now and you want to spend time that's temporary, you're going to have to say no to something else for a while, and say, no, I'm going to focus my time on this kind of activism, and then I can return to that after January. You know, you can look at it that way. So how do you keep this going, though? How do you keep your political activism going? That's the biggest question. What popped up in your head? What did I miss? Again, what do you think of all this? So is it daunting? Is it too much? What has worked for you? I'd love to hear it in the comments. And if you like this, please like it as you leave. If you want to hear more, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye.